Hey guys, Drifter here. Today I've got some Black Ops 2 gameplay for you, and the topic of today's video is don't be a doormat, or no more Mr. Nice Guy. That's kind of what's going to happen in this video here. As per always with Black Ops 2, I have a strange affinity for the TAC-45, and I start off playing pistol only for the first half of this gameplay, go more or less even, not so spectacular, not performing as well as I wanted to, and then eventually I get really sick of these riot shield users that like to post up in the corners, and I'm like, alright, no more Mr. Nice Guy, I'm not going to play around anymore. I break out a real gun, and I managed to get a swarm in about 2.5 minutes. So you're going to get to see the radical jump in skill between me with a pistol and me with a regular weapon. But let's move back to the topic of today's video. I personally have a bad habit of kind of being a doormat, or being too nice for my own good, and I know that's not exactly what you would call a humble or healthy statement, but it is a problem that I do have. A lot of times I just don't know when to say no, and I get all bent out of shape because I can't help people, or I help too much and kind of run myself into the ground. But in short, in today's video, what you need to do is you need to be able to take care of yourself first, because if you spend all of your time helping others to the point where you're not able to take care of yourself, you're going to get all bent out of shape. You're going to get run down. It's going to be bad for you, and it's never good to hurt yourself for others' benefit. And on top of that, even if it's a truly altruistic mean and it's not something that bothers you, if you let yourself get run down too much, you can't help anybody when you can't even help yourself. When you get to that point, you are completely useless to anyone, and sometimes you get taken advantage of. Sometimes people will just do that, and then if you need some sort of reciprocation or help or care, they just don't care, and you're just out of luck, which is very unfortunate. We're going to skip over to a little personal story of mine, a little bit about how I grew up and how I think and things like that. I grew up with parents that, while they did provide for me and they obviously taught me things, there were some things in their lives that they never learned, and they weren't entirely able to help themselves. Or at least in some ways. My mother obviously being mentally ill and having some deficits there, no formal education. My father had a really bad back, so he was physically unable to do several things, mostly anything that involved driving or picking things up off the ground. Also, he never really learned about modern technology very much, so everything was kind of mysterious, needed a lot of explaining. My grandfather was blind, mentally very sharp and acute, but he was blind, so he just needed lots of reading, lots of assistance, that sort of thing. Grandmother never actually needed a whole lot of help, but it was different things. My mother, I mean, it sounds kind of cocky to say this, like, needed a lot of things explained to her, so once I hit about 2nd or 3rd grade, I had to do kind of like a lot of teaching with my mom, which she hated sometimes and absolutely needed others. I'd have to put a lot of work into it, and sometimes she would have a breakdown, and I would have to take care of my brother or take care of the family or do something entirely not, what you should be doing as a kid. And I never thought that it was abnormal. I never said no. I never stopped. I just continued to do. And there was one time where it got so bad I was practically raising my little brother, and I got really badly sick at the time. I think I probably had pneumonia or some sort of other respiratory disease, but I couldn't go to the hospital because I couldn't drive and because somebody had to be there to take care of both my mother and my brother, so I just decided to wait it out and I'll get better. And I ended up getting really bad pneumonia. It really screwed me up when I was a little kid. With my father, nothing really extreme like that happened, but I did have to do a lot of picking up. Lift this, carry that, do this, do that. And just some things that didn't even make sense, but due to his physical disabilities, he always needed help. It was very time-consuming, but I never begrudged him for it. Grandfather I could burn all day on, and this is a good example of somebody that might not even appreciate it. Dude can't read, can't see anything, is almost completely blind, but very mentally acute, very inquisitive. He'd watch a lot of TV, learn something on the History Channel, or want to read his Bible or something like that. So he'd call me and ask me to come down and do this for him, which I would do. Not such a big deal. But then we'd run into this problem of the books would disagree with the TV, or he wanted more information and it wasn't available, or I don't believe that you're actually reading it, you've got to be skipping over something, blah, blah, blah. And it was kind of the thing of not appreciating the help. Like, I'd go way out of my way to sit there and read for hours, and I'd just get blasted for it about how shitty of a reader I am, or about how I'm not reading it right, or all these other kind of things, or he's going to be nice and let me read less. And I was like, oh, well, how kind of you to let me off the hook so easily, grandfather, that I don't have to read for it all. So you can kind of do things like that, and there's other situations where you really need to be able to help. I'll go back to like taking care of my mom and brother again. Like, my brother needed it. He was a kid. He's a really little kid. Somebody had to do it. And I did it too hard, and I pushed myself too far, and I got sick, and I got to where I couldn't take care of anybody, to where I was just like useless and in the hospital. And all of these things I did, I'm not trying to build myself up. It's actually a personal flaw of mine that I'll work myself to this point where I get physically or mentally messed up about it. It's something that's actually a detriment, that if you do too much is bad for you. And while I did help a ton, I didn't really volunteer for these jobs. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I did these things out of the altruism and the pure goodness of my heart. I was volunteered by other people, so to speak. I was told to do it. I was requested to do it. I would get a call. I didn't say no, I guess would be the furthest that I would go on the volunteer work. I just wouldn't say no. I wouldn't refuse. I wouldn't argue about it. I wouldn't pitch a fit about it. It was just easier for me to do whatever than it was to stop. And that was kind of how it would go. This habit carried on with friends a little bit, not as much. I didn't, again, volunteer a whole lot of time, but I would help when I needed to, and sometimes to the detriment of my own well-being. I've had situations where, you've probably seen this on my channel last year sometime, there were a lot of people sending me messages about suicide and about depression and things like that, and they just kept piling up and piling up and piling up, and I'd get message after message of people wanting to kill themselves, and I took it on as a personal responsibility that I should help these people, that they're reaching out, that I have to do something about it, that I can't just sit here and do nothing. And it eventually got to me really bad. Like, it got me really bad down and depressed mentally. It got me completely worn out, where I had to say no, I had to step back, and I had to stop answering these messages because they were really getting to me. It was like affecting my physical and mental health. So there's a lot of different ways this can kind of get up to you. And I'm just trying to remind, because actually the idea came from a comment in a video where a guy was talking about all the things he did for his girlfriend and how mean she is to him and things like this. And I was like, well then, why in the hell do you still do these things for your girlfriend if she obviously doesn't appreciate it and is so mean to you? Or you see this sometimes, like, I do such and such for my family, and then they say these mean things to me. I was like, well then, why do you lift a finger for them anymore? Like, you can't make yourself a slave, and you can't work for others' happiness. A lot of times you really want to be friends with somebody, you really want them to like you, so what you do is, like, if I do nice things for them, if I send them gifts, if I help them with something, if I volunteer, if I go way out of my way and fix a problem of theirs, then they're definitely going to like me. And unfortunately, it just doesn't work like that at all. The funny thing is, research has proven, or not necessarily hard proven, because mental research is a funny thing, we'll say found is a better word, that if you do nice things for other people, and you really try to help them and give them gifts and stuff, if your attention isn't wanted already, they most often perceive that to be annoying or not valuable. If you want somebody to like you, the really trick is to convince them to do something nice for you, because in that way they invest time and effort into you as a person, and they'll come back and check. It's just sounded kind of weird how that works. Like, if you want somebody to like you, you make them do something nice for you. You don't necessarily have to do anything nice to them. Obviously, you don't have to be, an ass about it, but it's just very different. And the whole advice of this video, the main message, is that I think you should just take care of yourself first, and don't bend over backwards for other people, because you'll get to where you can't help them, they don't care to help you, or maybe not even able to, and it's just not a good situation. You don't want to be a doormat. The old saying, nice guys finish last or whatever, they have these sayings because they have a hint of truth. There is this good old boy in the office that'll do the work, and then he'll do more work, and then because he's such a good bud, you can pile more and more work on him. He's doing the work of 3 people, and he does this just because he's a nice guy and he wants to help and he wants to be a friend or whatever, and everybody else is taking off and being lazy and have a great time, and the nice guy's getting shafted. And I don't necessarily want all of you to be that guy. And it's kind of crazy because all my channel is about helping people and giving good advice, and I'm not trying to give the advice that you should be stingy, that you should stay at home and not help people and not be useful, and that, because that's very bad. If you're just very self-absorbed and self-interested, that's also very, very bad. But you have to have a balance in your life. You can't be all one side or all on the other. You have to be able to take care of yourself and be able to help others so that you can be part of a nice society, community. That's kind of how we're designed or evolved to be, whatever you want to believe. That's all for this video, and I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you learned something useful. Also, I hope that you enjoyed the duality of the gameplay there, because personally in the second round when I broke out that MSMC, it was a totally different game. If you enjoyed, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.